Some of them Nobel Prize winners, Emmy Award winners, astronauts, Olympic gold medalists. I discovered that people thinking about their unlocked moments of remarkable clarity gave them a new lens on who they really were, helped them to make new connections that were powerful for them, and helped them to understand really their deepest underlying sense of purpose. And now when I work with founders and CEOs of startup and scale-up businesses, senior executives in 25 countries around the world as an executive coach, I hear those connections all the time. And those people that have experienced unlocked moments are people who are deeply authentic, influential, powerful leaders who others want to follow. And that's why we're here today. I'm really excited that today we're going to hear from somebody who embodies that quote from Viktor Frankl, that connection of the power of choosing your path ahead and what freedom that gives you. I'd like you to welcome to the stage entrepreneur and investor Dominic McGregor.
Thank you for the introduction, Gary.
So normally when I'm recording the podcast, I say, hello, dear listener. Welcome to another episode of The Unlocked Moment. Today we have many listeners, and this is a live podcast recording that you'll hear on The Unlocked Moment, you'll see on YouTube and on all of our social channels today. Dominic today is a successful investor with fearless adventures, investing in and driving growth in entrepreneur-led e-commerce businesses. But he's most famous for co-founding Social Chain with Dragon's Den star Steven Bartlett in 2013, and after 6 years selling that business and eventually taking the combined business public. The Unlocked Moment, though, is about the person more than it is about the job. And Dominic has spoken publicly, and we'll be talking today, about some of the personal struggles that he experienced on his journey of entrepreneurship, and why he published his first book called I'm Never Drinking Again, How to Stop Drinking So Much and Change Your Relationship with Alcohol. I'm curious to understand the pressures that Dominic experienced as a founder of a high-growth business, how his struggle with alcohol shaped his path, and of course, the unlocked moments of remarkable clarity that he experienced on that journey. Dominic McGregor, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Unlocked Moment.
Thank you.
Now, before I do start, I do want to say that we've had a conversation before. So we're talking about some quite sensitive and quite personal topics here. And I just want you to know that Dominic's comfortable that we're in this conversation. Beginnings are important, and a question I usually start a podcast conversation with is, in order to understand the person you are today, where would we need to start in your story?
Yes, a great question. Thank you for having me on. We spoke previously, but my answer is actually going to change today.
Good.
Because actually, not many people know that, but we're actually 100 meters away from where Social Chain was founded.
Right.
So I used to live down, basically, I don't know which direction it is, but down on Clarence Dock. And when I left university, I moved to Leeds with my girlfriend at the time, and we were working out of a one-bed apartment, and none of this was here. Well, the Armories was here, but there was no coffee shops, and I think it was just a Pizza Express. And it probably was like a very depressive time, because I spent my entire time on my laptop just basically making tweets, running social media pages. And that's in those kind of months of living here, we kind of realized that Social Chain and this kind of social media thing was going to happen. But I remember, this is going to make me sound like a really bad person, but me and my girlfriend who were living together, we broke up. She stayed in the flat, I left the flat, and I've not been back here in 11 years now. So it's very kind of weird walking down the street where probably had one of the worst days of my life, with my girlfriend at the time, leaving that, and looking back up memory lane. So I think there's a real, probably that day when basically we fell out over me working too much. We were very young, we were high school romance, and I kind of said to her that, I think this is going to be something, this social media thing, and I kind of became very obsessive over it, spent a lot of time on my laptop, and really neglected the relationship, to be honest. It was definitely my fault the relationship broke down, and we were at different stages of our lives. I was wanting to start this business, and she was still a student. So there was a day, which was February 3rd, when our kind of paths split. And that was kind of maybe a driver for me to realize that, like, I need to go and do something here. And this is, you know, I've turned away something, she's a lovely person, great girl. I've turned away an opportunity here to go and try and make something successful. So that, for me, maybe in the social chain story, was like a really personal unlock moment, which I guess being here and, you know, seeing it all again has probably become quite apparent this week.
Yeah. Were you always somebody who was quite intensive about things you turned your mind to when you're growing up?
Yeah, I think I always have like maybe like a level of like delusion and self-belief. I don't know if that kind of never really had any kind of anxieties or depressions growing up. And I was speaking to a person I went to school with, and she was telling me how she was getting like anxious at GCSE time. And I was like, I've never got anxiety or like any kind of sense of failure ever. I kind of just coasted through a lot. And I always had kind of this level of confidence, you know, be it going into exams or be it going into a football match, that everything was going to be okay. And I kind of really rolled that into my kind of like ethos in life. So when coming to make decisions to drop out of university, that was kind of what was a driving force behind me, is like, well, I'll be okay. You know, I've been okay previously, so I'll continue to be okay. So I think I just approached everything with a sense of, it's going to be fine, and I'll just do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So I think I had that real, call it self-belief, call it delusion, call it a lack of maybe self-awareness, maybe a little bit, to just throw myself into something and assume no matter what happens, everything's going to be okay.
I mean, that is the great entrepreneur trait, that you kind of have to have a bit of that, otherwise you'd stop. Everyone would quit if they thought of the anxieties.
I think for the entrepreneur journey, that's definitely step one. You've got to have the level of kind of conviction or level of delusion, whatever you call it, to believe that what you're trying to do is going to work. So that's the step one. And I think what then the entrepreneur learns is every single other thing, everything else about risk and about like, you know, when to push, when to pull, when to scale up, when to like do things. So I think that getting started is always the difficult part when it comes to entrepreneurship. And a lot of people just talk themselves out of starting. And I think from my perspective, I didn't have that voice in my head telling me not to do it. I had the voice in my mind saying, it's going to be okay. No matter what happens, you'll be fine. So yeah, I think that's the big step to get started, and then you learn everything else as you go along.
Yeah. Talk to me about the early stages of Social Chain. How old were you then? You know, where were you in that journey? And what was the young Dominic and the young Steven Bartlett in a room somewhere?
Living down here at 19, broke up with my girlfriend, and then that was in the February. And then 2 weeks later, we got our first ever Social Chain deal, which was like someone paying us to like post us on social media. And we did the normal thing that like now whatever two young single guys would do. We decided to book a flight to Thailand. So after breaking up with my girlfriend, I was like, I must have done the whole like eat, pray, love Bali thing and gone and found myself. But flew to Thailand, two of us, and you know, just broke up with this girl, and sat there and be like, okay, this, you know, we're on our laptops in Thailand. We've managed to do this at 19 years old when kind of our peers are still at university and all that kind of stuff. And we're thinking to ourselves, you know, this is an opportunity here. You know, it's got us this far. That was the reason we didn't fly earlier was because Steve didn't have a passport. Steve had never been on holiday before, so he had to go to get an emergency passport from Liverpool to be able to fly. So like for us, like it was such a big thing to go from like some kids who were running things on computers to actually like being in Thailand, and it was like this whole like a magical trip. But it took us that far, and we were like, okay, how far can this take us? You know, can we go even further? Could we hire someone? And from our perspective, it was we were just running things on a computer in Thailand. So we were kind of really ahead of ourselves of like thinking what was possible, and we then realised that, you know, this social media thing, it's not going to be a fad. You know, we started to see a lot of people that we knew were continuing to use it. It was going to stick, and then what we had to do effectively was convince probably more senior people in marketing departments in companies that social media is going to be the future. And, you know, a lot of people had experience of platforms like MySpace, Bebo, Friends Reunited, where it never really became the thing. You know, there was a fad and then it faded. But with us, being on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, they're kind of the new wave of things that were coming through. We just believed, because we saw it amongst young people, that it was going to be the future. So we had a huge level of conviction. We had no responsibilities. We had nothing that we were accountable for. And I always kind of come back to that as a kind of key message, is like we had nothing to lose. You know, literally a week before I went to Thailand, I lost my girlfriend. Literally, we were starting from zero when it came to like money, and we had nothing to lose. So the only thing we could do is move forward. So we were just continually obsessive about moving forward as fast as we can.
I think you've mentioned losing your girlfriend 4 times. And
yeah, I need to get over that, don't I? I'm married now.
And the language is interesting. Lost. Because it's about...
God, here we go, psychoanalysis.
It is interesting. Talk to me about the pressure you're under as a young founder and a growing business. I
mean, at that point, there was no pressure. But then what kind of happened is we scale a company, we start to realize, all right, this is something. So you make a plan. You know, I remember we came back from traveling, and one of our clients offered us investment. So we start to make a plan. We draw some numbers down on a piece of paper. We took the average salary of a salesperson. We took the average amount of money we were making at that time. We tried to make the maths work. And we looked at it and go, oh my God, we're not going to make any money doing this. So we kind of talked ourselves out of it a little bit. And we kind of just like, okay, hiring people doesn't make sense. So let's just run it just to us two. And then when the client offered us investment, we were really tempted, because it was like a figure we'd never seen before. You know, I felt like it was like, for me, was like a real sense of showing the world, of dropping out of university, and people being like, oh, why are you leaving university to run a Twitter account? And for me, it was like maybe a sense of, okay, this is an achievement. You know, this is the first thing we can write home about and say, actually, someone else has validated our ideas. So Steve and I spent a lot of time going back and forth around whether we were going to actually take the investment in. And eventually, we landed on a situation where we were going to do it. And then we go and we go and hire people, we go and get a new office, and what you kind of realize very, very quickly is that money's very, very quickly spent. You know, you kind of spend it in your mind before you even get it, and then when you actually come to have it, it's then deployed. And then you've got this team, you've scaled up, your revenues are growing, you've got some press about you, and then it's all kind of like it was a real nice wave of like, everything was feel like it was working, everything was coming into fruition, and then we started to work with some really big clients, and then it just kind of shifted really, really quickly from everything being really easy to everything being very difficult. And this was like the first kind of inflection point of the business where growth happened, where, you know, going to work with naturally bigger clients, we started to notice that payment terms that we could previously negotiate up front were now being pushed to 90 days, just because of their processes. We had no idea about that. So you start to have to manage cash flow. The projects get bigger, which is great, but then the expenditure on them increases as well. So before you get paid, you've got to pay out. And then you start seeing people in the team, you know, getting cars, getting mortgages. You're like, oh my God, I'm responsible for all this. And it felt like it was in the space of like really quickly in 6 months, but you're like, oh my God, like there's like a real undertone of pressure that I'm, you know, maybe self-creating, but it's happening now because there's a lot more moving parts and a lot more plates to spin. So. And
how old were you at that point?
20.
Wow.
So like a year after a year after traveling and sitting on the beach in Thailand with no responsibilities, we've suddenly got about a team of about 15, 20 people at this point.
Wow.
We have a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
You know,
and this is you who hadn't really failed much at that point.
No.
You hadn't had that sort of the robustness that comes from 3 failures behind you and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and it's really weird. Like there's a day which really sticks with me, and it's 3rd of November. So that was the day we got our first investment, the first one I spoke about. So that was at the November after of travelling, and then that following February, so a year after we went travelling, we got our first office in Manchester. And you know, it was crazy to go from like 2 kids to a team of 20 in a year. So it's kind of, you know, nothing can prepare you for that kind of rate of growth, especially when you're so young. You know, if you've been in an industry like now, for example, I could handle hiring 20 people in the space of a year. That's not a problem. But back then, like you're not capable enough of knowing yourself to let alone go and hire people and, you know that you're doing the right thing. So yeah, it was like it felt so quickly.
When was the shift from drinking is something that happens outside of work to drinking is an issue?
So coming back to the 3rd of November, so the next 3rd of November was when we got our next round of investment. It's crazy how it seemed to happen like 12 months after, but that was effectively £1 million investment, and that was to scale up the operation. And I remember I remember it was a really weird day. So the documents were signed on the 3rd of November and the cash was transferred on the 13th of November. And I woke up on the 13th of November, looked at the bank account, I was like, oh, this is fantastic, look at this. But I was actually in Paris celebrating, and I got caught up in the French terrorist attacks. But I remember, it wasn't badly, I wasn't anywhere, but I was just in France at the time, in Paris at the time. And I remember kind of getting a sense of real anxiety. There was just one period when I basically was at the football game, and then I left to go back to the hotel. And there was one point where I was walking down the street, and about 19 police cars went past me, all sirens, and I just felt this physiological reaction of anxiety, stress, and really kind of felt it in me. And then went home, had a glass of wine in the hotel, and relaxed me. And I think at that point, it was probably the start of my emotional connection of alcohol and my reactions and emotions happening. Yeah. So when things would happen later on, I had a bad day, I would drink. If I had a good day, I'd drink. So it started to be that every single occasion of anything that happened, good or bad, the whole win or lose on the booze kind of vibe, I would have a drink. So what started out as kind of just an innocent, maybe unwinding and relaxing after a bad day, turned into something, again, very, very quickly, in the space of a couple of months, of where I was just drinking a lot, every day. And it wouldn't be a big thing that would happen in the day, it could be a bad day, it could just be a small thing that happened, but I'd need to have a drink that night to unwind and relax.
What I'm hearing underneath that is that actually there was this massive scale up of pressure on you that was happening. You're 10 times the size of the team in a year. You've got investors on board, you've got major clients, you've got needs and payment terms, all that kind of stuff. And you're starting to get a physical or physiological reaction to the stress that you're experiencing. That's sort of underlying the story with the drink.
100%, and I think the kind of stimulus response connection was formed between me and drinking, me and alcohol. Just even if it was just a beer to celebrate a good day, if great things were happening, it would just be there. And I think I've reflected on this quite a lot, is there was just a real lack of self-awareness, of self-understanding of this isn't healthy, and this isn't right to do this. So it's one of the things about being so young. You have so much pressure on you, so many eyeballs and responsibilities that I wasn't able to handle it.
Yeah. And what kind of hours were you working then?
We didn't really. We had this joke. We were in the office on weekends, so our whole life was just work. I think coming back to, we saw an opportunity that social media was a frontier. Social media was sweeping everyone's mind, and people were, is it taking over the world? And people were unsure about it. And I call these things now frontiers, and these frontiers come every now and again. We're looking at a frontier right now with AI. AI is the next frontier, and businesses are all unsure about how it's going to happen. If we started Social Chain today, it would definitely be a AI-focused business, helping businesses that utilize that. But these frontiers happen, and when they happen, you've got to ride the wave and capitalize on them as an opportunity. And what we felt, I don't know whether this is naivety or whether it was a reality, is that we were in a race in social media to get as far ahead as we could, as quick as we could. And we did believe, and we did really think about it, is that if we work on a Saturday, even if it's just tidying up everything from the week before or getting things ready for the week ahead, is that would give us an advantage. And, it did. We worked really, really hard. And when I talk about things like burnout, and I talk about things like managing yourself, the reason I can talk about that is because I did it. I burnt out. I really pushed ourselves to the limit, working 8 o'clock at night, every single night, working weekends, not doing anything for myself. The only time I go to the gym would probably be 9 o'clock at night, and that'd be once or twice a week. So it was a real abuse of ourselves, and I think the saving grace for it was we were so young that we could do that, but we were really kind of pushing ourselves to the limit, and to the point where that performance curve, really deteriorated, because really after 6, 7 o'clock, you're a little bit like a zombie, So we really kind of pushed ourselves, obviously, too far.
I'm hearing this thing which is a step-by-step, almost insidious growth of pressure factors almost: time, clients, investors, market competitors, and a progressive decline in your coping mechanisms: no time, physical, emotional burnout, and lots of other factors. And those two things are going in opposition. Suddenly it switches, and the only thing that's keeping you on the wagon in a way is drinking. That's your coping mechanism. You wrote something on Instagram which I think is such a powerful statement. You said, "The day I got the most drunk and said I'm never drinking again was the best day of my life."
Yeah, this is a really strange paradox, because obviously at the time when I hit rock bottom, you just want the world to end. I've upset people in the business. I've upset my girlfriend at the time, who now is my wife. I'm about to kind of walk away from the business, which is my purpose, and I just want the world to swallow me up. That whole sense of like beer, fear, whatever. And like in that moment, I'm feeling the most pain I've ever felt in my life. But now I look back and go, thank God that happened. I'm like, whew. Like I believe, given my like nature and given how I am as an individual, that was always going to come at some point. There was always going to be a rock bottom blow up or whatever, because I hadn't learned the coping mechanisms of how to deal with things. And I'm glad it happened as early as it did in my life, because now I'm much better at dealing with problems and emotions. So, I've had many days worse than that day now. Many kind of real difficult things I've been through in life, personally, family, all that kind of stuff. But I'm much more capable of dealing with them now, because I understand my emotions, I understand my triggers, I understand how to manage stress and strain. I can manage my own boundaries, I can protect myself. All these things I never learned when I was 21 years old. I didn't understand this kind of stuff. So, it was the best day of my life, because it taught me what I needed to do as a person to grow and to be the best version of myself.
And that's a really great example of a true unlock moment. You will remember where you were, who you were with, what you were thinking in that moment. Yeah,
and I think the unlock moment obviously came afterwards. When I'm drunk and doing what I'm ridiculously stupid stuff doing when I'm drunk, I'm not having a moment of like But it was the Monday afterwards when I went to go and see a therapist, and I don't know why, but I just remember this unlock, the pressure, my shoulders being relieved, where he sat me down. I kind of blurted out to him about what I'm going through, about the pressures of running the business, how I'm feeling, how I'm acting, why I'm, just talking really. And I've never, like this stuff is all the stuff I've internalized in my mind. I've never said it to anyone. So I'm just blurring out at him basically. And he sits down, he's a guy called Jamie, I can't really say cute, but just like a sweet, normal individual, Scottish guy, gave me a cup of tea, therapist, and made me feel really comfortable and really safe. And then he just sat there listening to me for 45 minutes, blabber on. I'm like, just keep going, I keep going. And he sits there, he's drawing on his little piece of paper and goes, I'm not going to do the accent because I can't do a Glaswegian accent. But he just says, oh, so, you're really struggling with anxiety. He said, you've got a little bit of imposter syndrome that's going on around you, and you're drinking to cope. And it was just like, in that, 2 lines, it just explained my entire, feelings. And that was just a sense of, the diagnosis, the sense of someone telling you what's wrong, that you just go, someone said what's wrong with me, and they can put a plan in place to help me fix myself. And that was the moment where, again, I felt like this real, release and unlock of, every single doubt and every single, internalization of thought I ever had was just someone telling me what was wrong with me. And me not thinking, and self-analyzing every single situation. So for me, that's, the real sense of, unlocking myself, and basically someone saying to me, I'm going to help you, and I can help you, was the moment when I was like, thank God.
That's really powerful. It's really powerful, and many times with people, particularly where they've got this kind of story around their unlocked moment, that real deep, powerful, impactful moment, they use the word surrender. They say in that moment it felt like surrender to the reality, surrender to the truth. It's simple, it's clear, now I can do something about it, and I hear that in what you're saying. So there's two anchor points to this story. The first is the young kid down the road who had never failed and was a bit obsessive about stuff and threw themselves into stuff to the loss of other things that were important to them. And you hadn't figured out that balance and the compromises yet. And then this unlocked moment, the moment when somebody said, this is what you're dealing with, and here's how we can start to change things. And you were talking about wanting to help. Tell me about where you are now. You've written this book. You're running Fearless Adventures. Why is it that you do what you do?
Yeah, so that, me stopping drinking, it's really weird, because I don't know whether the values I've got now are the values that I had when I was younger, and whether I've actually are a completely different person, or whether I'm just living my true self now. It's something I really think about. But one of the reasons why I wanted to basically Crusoe's chain, left that company, and the whole time I kind of realized what we were doing was we were helping other businesses grow. That's what we were doing. We were a marketing agency, we were a service, and at the same time we were managing our own stress and our own problems, but we were also helping clients and helping them grow. So I got the experience of seeing how to do a business environment myself, but also helping 50 other businesses at the same time do the same thing that we were doing. And I always looked at the kind of two things and was like, well, the two things I think the most important in terms of when it comes to business is A, marketing, which is the easy stuff, and then B, operationally, how do you scale and recruit great people? You put those two things together and it's a really good formula for growth. And I always thought those two things, and as an agency, what felt the worst was the meaninglessness of work. Mm-hmm. The work we were doing felt so meaningless because I remember, in the early days when we were working with clients and the founder would come in and say you've done an amazing job, this has happened to the business, it was great. And we were we actually felt like we made a difference. And then as we got bigger, what happens is you work with bigger clients. And I remember the day we won Coca-Cola, and it was a great moment. It was oh my God, they're one of the world's biggest brands and stuff. And someone said to me, I can't remember who it is, and I'd love to know, is well, if you're an agency, you should be working with Coca-Cola. I was like, why? It's well, they work with the most agencies in the UK. I'm then I was this thing here in my mind. I was it's not, I would much have rather have been the one agency for a big growing client than part of a roster of many who, they have their, you just like a number to them a little bit. And then I started to think about it a lot deeper. I was the work we do in Coca-Cola in one market is not going to move the needle. And if it does move the needle, the people it moves the needle for, we're never going to see. Basically marketing directors were appointed us to get promoted. That was their kind of mindset. If we bring these guys in, they'll do a great job, and I'll get a promotion in 6 months' time. But actually, it's not going to move the needle for anyone. So it started to feel even though we were working on these big clients, it felt so purposeless from work. And then I was I found myself trying to seek purpose within the organization. I was great, the business is running, we're working with great clients, we're doing great work, the forecasts are kind of set for the next 2 years, great, but I'm empty. Then I become a little bit of an obstruction in the business because I'm the BAU stuff, let's just leave it because I'm not bothered by it, but let me go and seek out something which I'm more passionate about. So I then become an entrepreneur again, an intrapreneur, and starting new things in the business. Yeah. And when you've got a big organization, it's much easier to be nimble when you're small, but when you're big. And look, we tried to start things in the business. We tried to start an academy. We tried to invest in brands and put them through our infrastructure. And it didn't work because everyone was already assigned to Coca-Cola or to Amazon. So they were all working on that stuff. And if I wanted to start something else over here, it couldn't use the benefit of the rest of the business. So
what I hear in that is, it's about people.
Yeah.
It's about people, it's about talent, it's about purpose. That's a big theme coming through what you've done, because where you started was a very, very effective process and application of knowledge and skills that other people didn't have. and you've become now much more a purpose-driven leader. Where are you in the alcohol journey now?
Oh God, it's weird. It's a weird one. I think the book was a great reminder for what I've been through. But like, again, I think my belief is that alcohol and any addiction or any substance for me, like be it food or something, is something I use when I'm not feeling well emotionally. So like, as long as I'm feeling well emotionally and I can handle what's going on, I don't think I ever had the need to drink. And it's something I've thought about a lot. And like, the one emotion I've never been through in my life yet, touch wood, like hopefully not, is like I've not had like major grief. I've been very fortunate not to have major grief in my life of that. And I'm a little bit anxious, a little bit worried about how I'll be when that happens to me. But the rest of my emotions, I'm fine. I've been through everything in life. I've got married. I've had highs, I've had lows. I've had every kind of like up and down feeling, and I've never needed this drink. So like, I've gone through everything great. You know, I used to romanticize the idea of a toast on my wedding day. But my wedding day came and went, I didn't drink, so that was fine. So as once I've gone through what I kind of like call the firsts of going through everything for the first time, like I remember going to my first festival, and you know, I was like, oh, tick, I've done that. So like, my list of things of like emotional moments in alcohol is like down to just like major grief. Okay. So everything else is fine, and like when that comes, I'll deal with it. But I'm a little bit apprehensive that like if I ever have that in my life, it might turn me. But I'm confident it won't.
If there's someone in the audience who might resonate with the story that you've talked about, and maybe they've not shared that publicly before, maybe other people around them are not even aware of it, what would you want to say to them?
So when I started writing the book, I was really like, you know, alcohol's bad. You know, it's the devil. And like, everyone knows addictions, you know, be it betting, be it food, be it alcohol, they're all kind of the same. We all know that cake is really bad. We all know that. You know, you can't have too much cake. But I still eat cake and brownies, and I love them. But I know they're bad for me. People are the same with smoking, with drinking. They know it's bad for them, they do it. And you can't stop people having vices. You know, everyone always comes up to me and be like, what is your vice then? What, you know, so I don't think you can stop that, because people need that sense of, you know, dopamine and stuff. So I would say that these things and like everything like that is normal. You know, it is normal to have a drink for some people. It is normal to eat a brownie. If you want to have a vape, you know, that is fine. But each of them, you've got to ask yourself, how is my relationship with them? And as long as it's a relationship, like a friendship or anything, like where you're managing it and you're questioning it, and that you can look yourself and say, my relationship currently is healthy with it, fine. I'm not out here trying to stop every single person in the world to drink. I'm just trying to tell people that I went from a situation where my life was fine. You know, I was in Thailand, I was having the time of my life, I was drinking, it was fun, and there was no problems in my life. But very, very quickly, you know, a couple of pieces on the chessboard moved, and I fell into a situation where alcohol was managing me, and not me managing alcohol. And what I want to kind of get people aware about is that these things, we know they're bad, but just ask yourself, is it healthy right now? And if you think the answer is no, and you can ask yourself that question, do something about it. And it's what I want to encourage is that sense of alcohol or any substance or any addiction is a relationship.
I think you are an inspiring leader. I think that you're a very thoughtful and very mindful person for the journey you've been through and the amount of deep thinking and work you've had to do to take yourself on the journey. And I hope that you in the audience are hearing that the reason why I talk a lot about unlocked moments is because in going to that place for yourself and thinking about maybe for you what that might be for you, I think it really connects you with what really matters to you and really, really why you do what you do. So, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that story with such openness and vulnerability with the group today. The unlocked moment is that flash of remarkable clarity when you suddenly know the right path ahead. And for entrepreneur and investor Dominic McGregor, it was recognizing that he had to change his relationship with alcohol that put him on a new path to a healthier future. I'd encourage you all to go out and buy a copy of I'm Never Drinking Again, just out on Amazon, and I'm sure topping the bestseller charts in the appropriate Amazon category. And if you've enjoyed this story about unlocked moments, then follow both of us on LinkedIn. I run a newsletter called The Unlocked Moment on LinkedIn as well, that a few hundred people have subscribed to, and I've interviewed many other people. You can dive into some of those stories too. So Dominic, thank you once again for sharing your story, and do show your appreciation to Dominic. Thank you.